Anytime you find someone who has committed multiple homicides, the first question everybody wants to know is why. What made them that way? Why did they choose the victims they chose? And there's often no answer to that question.
I have met only one serial killer in my career, and it's a remarkable experience when you sit across the table from someone like that. When you are a serial killer, the thrill for you is the kill. When someone has no fear of capture, no fear of being identified, and responds in a violent way in the smallest provocation, they are the rare and most dangerous of violent criminals.
On January 26, 1988, a call was received about a fire in an apartment building.
The fire department responds. Their first priority is life safety. You have multiple families living in one building. That building on fire, it can cause quite a lot of damage and a lot of injury.
Is there anybody in here? Is there somebody to save?
Once the fire's out, then you can kind of gradually sort of condense down what your scene really is.
And then they started to look very hard to see if there was anyone left in this apartment.
In this particular case, in that investigation, they come across a body.
Most of the time, you're going to assume that that body died as a result of the fire. But in this case, there were several lacerations to the victim, both front and back. It was so evident that this wasn't a death from the fire, but rather a death from a violent act.
They seal off the scene. We're going to get homicide here. Naturally, they had to call Joe Kenda.
"5:30-ish in the morning. I'm pretty much awake anyway. But the call comes in, and there's some frantic dispatcher on the other end of the phone making announcements about what's happened. Don't tell me anything, because I don't want to know what you think you know. First reports are never to be believed. Give me an address. Where am I going? I'll decide what's happened when I get there. In 1988, I've been on the police department for 15 years. I was a supervisor in homicide. Mrs. Kenda wasn't all that thrilled with my choice of career. My kids weren't either, and I ignored them. I will admit that. And Mrs. Kenda and my children suffered for it. But I never left her presence without telling her I loved her. Because it might be the last time I ever saw her. As a policeman, you have raised your right hand to do something that is ultimately very dangerous. That's why they give you a gun and a pocket full of bullets. I was going to resolve violent death. I took an oath to do that. It meant something to me then, and it still does.
What do we got?
We show up. The fire captain takes me on a tour. The place is destroyed. It's the worst possible smell you've ever smelled in your life.
This is definitely an arson. What you have is multiple spots where fire was initiated and what appears to be newspaper used as an accelerant.
On top of that, you got a body there. His body's been set on fire. So you have to investigate that body to find out, okay, what happened to this guy?
His face has been slashed up. He's been stabbed in the abdomen multiple times. He's been stabbed in the back multiple times. The strikes are coming from the right, which would make that person right-handed.
So here he is, cut up to pieces. The most disturbing thing is someone has pulled out a section of his intestines. This was not the result of being stabbed. So you not only have a murder, you have somebody who's playing with the remains. Uh-oh. Who is this person that's been burned up and cut up and stabbed?
We were able to find a wallet not too far from the body, and that identified that person as 31-year-old Victor Woods, who lived at that address.
He's covered in newspapers. But one thing you notice on all of them is they all contain blood. Well, typically that's telling you that blood did not come from this victim laying on the ground because it's everywhere else on these papers.
Our bad guy is bleeding. When you use the knife, it gets slimy with blood. And your hand goes down the blade and you cut yourself, usually in the palm. A painful wound. When we look around, we find a knife. It's a 13-inch blade kitchen knife. It is covered in blood, obviously the weapon. So now what do you know? Our perpetrator did not come here armed. This is a weapon of opportunity. He finds it in the kitchen. He pulls it from the knife block. He uses it on Victor Woods. And he drops it because he has other things to do.
In the bathroom, there was a lot of blood in there, which would indicate that the killer, after he finished killing this guy, goes in, tries to bandage his wounds up.
This is not something that's just going to go away. It needs to be stitched. It needs to be put back together. So I immediately sent a detective to contact all the ERs and have them tell us if someone comes in with a deep wound in their right palm.
A key component of most investigations, but especially with murder investigations, is what we call neighborhood canvassing. You want to see who saw what and when, who heard what and when.
And lo and behold, a witness was located, 18-year-old gal who was with the Olympic Training Committee.
This girl is an Olympic athlete. Karate and judo are her specialties.
She said she was having trouble sleeping. And she wanted to do something to help stretch her back so she could get back to sleep.
There's a vending machine area in the complex. She's out there putting a coin in a machine, and she hears a muffled argument coming out of apartment 104. She can't tell what they're saying, but they're yelling at each other. And that draws her attention. And all of a sudden it stops.
And while she was outside, she saw a guy run up to the apartment complex and get into what she described as a muscle car.
And I asked her, so tell me about this car. Anything different about it? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's hot. Oh, yeah? How do you know? I could hear it. That car had throat. I know what that means, because I'm a car guy. I personally have always loved cars. I've had every kind of car you can imagine. When she says throat, that car had throat. It's got a rumble. It's intentional.
Generally, cars have a muffler exhaust system that's been muffled to make them quiet. Without that, the car is very noisy. Some people like a real deep rumble in their exhaust because it kind of gives the muscle car sound, muscle car feeling to the vehicle. This car is at least a tie to the crime scene should we find somebody.
The information is that the suspect left in a vehicle. The net grows with every minute as far as how far away he can be.
Less than half a mile from where those apartments are is the entrance to I-25. Interstate 25 starts in El Paso, Texas, runs through the states of New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, and into Montana. So there is a 4-lane pathway leading you into 3/4 of the western United States. 40 miles south of Colorado Springs, directly on I-25, in the city of Pueblo.
Did you ever think you'd be sitting here 34 years later talking about this?
No. Under no circumstances did I ever think that I would be talking about this again. It has brought up some bad memories.
My name is Roger Gomez. I'm a retired ex-detective with the Polk County Sheriff's Office. In March of '88, a rancher by the name of Sykes, Mr. Sykes, called in and said he wasn't sure what he had come upon. He was on horseback.
And he was actually looking for a baby calf that may have died.
You pay attention to your horse, well, it helps you in finding what you're looking for. As well as things that you might not want to find.
Roger was working patrol. He was a corporal in patrol. And he was working what we called South Sector.
When I drove up, I parked and I met with him. He couldn't tell what it was. I knew what it was. I knew it was the torso of a human being.
There is no head. There are no hands. Just a torso. Who could do that? Well, somebody did. So we are obviously looking for a serious criminal. He doesn't just kill. He dismembers. He's hacking them to pieces with a 13-inch knife. Maybe you're killing in Pueblo too, huh? Because we certainly think you're killing in Colorado Springs. We are a long way from Colorado Springs, Colorado, at this location, Ryan National Park. And now we have this horrible discovery of a human torso. Who is he? Who knows? At the moment, there is no way to identify him other than being human and being dead.
It was a very gruesome and a very brutal murder. It kind of makes you really want to solve the case when you see man's inhumanity to man like that.
Deputy Roger Gomez, sharp guy, been around the block. Sheriffs have a different approach to things because they wind up being very alone. You're 20 or 30 miles from the nearest other officer when you're out by yourself. Dangerous work. You never know what you might encounter.
When I first saw the torso, it was like a giant square pillow you'd find outside on your furniture. Big, thick. There was branches around it. It was like somebody tried to cover it up. We didn't realize initially until we uncovered it and we said, we have legs. This is a body. I understood why the rancher couldn't tell it wasn't a body. It was like, I remember the balminess of the skin. It didn't look like a body. It was dry, almost like leather.
In Colorado, we're in the mountains, and so it's very dry. And when you have low moisture environments and the body goes through decomposition, it heads in the direction of what we call mummification, which is a drying out of the body. The good part of that is it does preserve it.
The evidence is telling you it's been there for months.
Given the decomposition factor in the body, it's impossible for Gomez to determine a cause of death. They have to summon a coroner to that location.
These people are looking specifically for impact wounds, puncture wounds. They're looking for, in this case, a dismemberment, the type of saw that was used.
So if you're cutting through a neck bone, they're going to leave impressions on that neck bone.
The doctor finds a jagged cut line on the neck. The jagged cut line reveals this was done with a saw blade of some kind. The doctor finds a similar pattern on the wrist bones.
Not only do they kill someone, then they dump the body, then they cut him up. Now they've taken essentially souvenirs or other objects with them. There's a head and hands out there. And we're gonna go find them.
The head was removed and the hands were removed. That is 99% of the time to obscure identification. So we had no idea who it was at that point in time.
I was really working on trying to find any piece of evidence that I possibly could find that nobody else might find. This is going to sound a little bizarre, but I got in the place of that corpse and I lied down and felt that if I slammed the body down, maybe there's something that we can't see. I took pictures of every square inch of that place. I realized that there was no other evidence there.
There is no blood. No dried blood, no blood stain. Only this item, this torso. So this is a disposal site. Where's the rest of him? Who knows?
Nobody locked their doors, nobody bothered to take the keys out of their vehicle. And after this happened, why, that all changed immediately.
You are looking at somebody who's extremely cold. To not only kill, but then to dismember. That is a very rare thing. And it speaks to the viciousness of the person responsible. Who could do that? Back in Colorado Springs, our detective is running down who Victor Woods is, the first homicide victim. And steps are taken immediately to notify the family or friends in the area.
Vic was, I would consider him a best friend. He was the best man at my wedding. So you can't get much closer friends than that. It was my wife, Linda, who got the call.
He had this charisma about him and this personality that just oozed out of him.
She got a call from someone in the Colorado Springs Police Department asking if we knew or she knew Vic Woods.
I said, of course, he's our friend. And he says, well, he's deceased. And I was just stunned. I mean, I'll never forget that phone call.
It's almost like it's not real at first. You know, you hear it, you understand what the words are, but it doesn't quite sink in at first. Vic was from Zanesville, Ohio, and he had an opportunity to work in the bike shop out there in Colorado Springs and be the manager there.
And he is a knowledgeable and widely known bicycle repairman for high-end bicycles.
For being in retail sales, I think that fits Vic's personality exactly, and something he loved, cycling, was perfect for him.
As the detectives are looking into this case, they contact the apartment manager.
The manager says that Victor paid his rent absolutely on time every time. No issues whatsoever.
All we knew was that Vic seemed to be pretty happy at this bike shop and things were going good for him. And then the next thing you know, we get this phone call. It was completely counter to everything that was going on in his life at the time.
And it's a very common thing for witnesses to say, he didn't have an enemy in the world. Well, I disagree. He had at least one. That's who I'd like to meet.
The manager says, but I've heard there may be some problems with the business and there may be some friction between the boss and Victor.
Victor's business partner was a man named David McCarty. And oftentimes in a business relationship, there may be a lot of money involved. One person's action may have a real negative impact on the other partner and create a lot of anger.
Money is stressful within families, but when it's money involving a livelihood, I think that really ratchets up the tension.
David, the guy that owns the bike shop. What if he comes over and things get out of hand and the owner grabs a kitchen knife and decides to dance with Victor? Knowledge, access, arguments, can that add up to murder? It often does. Stranger killings are very rare. The real key in a murder case is, who are they? Who do they know? Business partnerships often end badly. There's money involved. That leads to a dispute that often cannot be resolved. Victor and the owner of the bicycle shop have argued about it in the past. So now the first person that gets my attention is this owner. Let's go to the bike shop and see if David might be afoot. I want to look at him. I want to look at the palm of his right hand. I want to talk to him. I want to do a lot of things. We go to the bicycle shop. There's a clerk in the sales counter. Is David here? Yeah, he's in his office. Could you have him come out? I'd like to speak to him. We're the police department. So around the corner comes David. David is on crutches and his leg is in a cast. A full leg cast. It's obviously been there for some time.
Joe asked him about his injury, and he said he had broken his leg and had surgery on it.
Is this the guy who's going to select the 13-inch knife and attack his 31-year-old worker who's in fine shape? Who's going to hold his crutches? We still want to talk to him, and we do.
So Joe lets him know that we learned that there may have been some friction between the two of you. David says, no, there was no friction, really.
He is pretty candid. He reports, yeah, there's money problems in the business, and Victor had ideas, and I disagreed with him, and we argued about it. But eventually I came around to his way of thinking, and we were going to start doing a few of the things that he suggested.
David says Victor had actually just gone out and contacted a bunch of hotels, trying to work a deal with them to rent bicycles from the shop so that their patrons could use the bicycles.
They were really looking forward to improving and continuing the business.
And I said, well, now let me explain. I'm with Homicide, and Victor, I'm afraid, is no longer with us. And he was absolutely floored, shocked to the maximum, couldn't believe anything about that. It really, really distressed him. He's trying to get into a chair. I said, let me help you. Grab my hand with your right hand. Grab my hand, and I'll take that crutch and set it up against the wall. His hand is pristine.
From the blood we found at the scene, we really anticipate that this suspect was going to have a wound to his hand.
Back to square one. The only known potential suspect is gone. So what else do we know about him?
David told Joe that Victor likes to go to a place called the Yukon Tavern for a couple of beers after work.
The Yukon Tavern at that time in 1988 was a very popular night spot. And it was several miles away from Victor's apartment. But on payday, Victor would go to the bar because he was a member of one of the pool leagues.
There's pattern because he was there frequently. So the chances of somebody who worked at the bar knowing something valuable to the investigation would be way high.
Well, what's he drive? He has a Toyota with ski racks on the roof. Okay, thanks. So off we go to the Yukon Tavern. As we parked, I turned to this detective. I said, hey, that's his ride. Right there in this lot. So Victor certainly was here, and his car still is. So we go in the bar.
The bartender is probably one of your best resources inside a bar. A good bartender knows his clientele because his tips are probably based on a lot of his work. It's important for him to pay attention to what's going on.
When investigators talk to the bartender, oh yeah, I know Victor very well. He comes in here all the time. Pretty nice guy. Usually no trouble. Gets along well with everybody. Everybody likes him. He comes in here and shoots pool.
Generally, he was a quiet individual. On this particular night, he seemed to be drinking a little bit more boisterous, a little bit more obnoxious.
I never saw Vic be a mean drunk. He was a fun, happy drunk. But Vic sometimes didn't have a filter. And as he drank, he would talk, and sometimes he might ruffle some feathers.
The bartender says he starts an argument with some people, and it winds up going out in the parking lot, and there is a fight. Bar fights can start over nothing. Alcohol is the driver. People have their inhibitions lowered by alcohol consumption. They develop something called liquid courage. They begin to believe that they are somehow a professional boxer because they've had 13 beers. And they're going to show these guys what they mean. Those fights can turn ugly. They can turn fatal. You want to talk to the people involved in the fight?
We're able to find all the bar patrons that were present at the time. Happened to be the local hangout for these people, and they pretty much describe it as just a simple misunderstanding.
Bar fights are a dime a dozen. One or both sides are intoxicated.
Well, it was no big deal. A little pushing and shoving out in the parking lot.
None of them have any kind of wounds on them to indicate that they cut somebody during a murder. Everybody was able to account for each other's actions during that period. Really eliminated all of them from being a suspect.
So now you're looking at, okay, how come Victor's car is still at the bar and he's not? Somebody had to have given him a ride home.
Did this person give Victor Woods a ride to the morgue? He certainly could have. Pueblo PD has a horrible discovery of a human torso. This is something unheard of in that jurisdiction. We're still trying to figure out what happened, physically what happened. And those facts are not known, and they're not going to be known until we have an autopsy.
The medical examiner coroner is operating with a hyper focus towards what's the cause, what's the manner.
I was very interested in the process of what happens with the body. So I was invited in when the body was taken in and actually roll the body on the table. That whole process was really helpful to find out what happened.
There's nothing pleasant about this. It's horrible. It smells horrible. It looks even worse. It is the nature of trying to resolve violent death.
Dealing with cadavers and working on them when I was a pre-med student. To me, I had to get over that even then. I had to get over that process.
Not everyone's cup of tea, as they say, but it is work that must be done.
Even without a head, even without hands, there are still clues there.
It's obvious that these were post-mortem injuries. There's no penetration wounds to the torso, no evidence of gunfire. So what killed this guy? Probably the wounds were confined to the head. But the head's missing. We don't know who this human is, and for the moment, there's no way to find out.
May 7th of 1988, there was a second call that came in to the Pueblo County Sheriff's Office. In the Rye area, there was people on the trail, and they came across what appeared to be bones, but they weren't even sure if it was human bones. Until they actually saw the skull. Roger then responded
It was somebody reporting a skull. I immediately clicked. I said, is this the skull to the torso?
Is it the one we're missing from our initial investigation of John Doe? Or are we dealing with a killer who is dismembering people and throwing them away like yesterday's garbage? What is going on here? We don't know, but we certainly need to find out. At this point in this investigation, we have discovered a human skull, 20 miles from where this body was discovered, with no head. Is this the head to that body?
So right away, I'm thinking, just stay calm, don't jump to conclusions, let the scientific evidence support what you think before you open your mouth. And that's what I did.
The hiker that found his head takes the deputies to the area where he found it, which is a ravine. The ravine is within throwing distance of a road. So in the search of the ravine, they do discover some items of evidence that are important. One is a pair of black leather gloves.
And the gloves, to me, I think they either work out with them, they're bodybuilders, or they're motorcycle gloves, just looking at it. Then the next step is taking pictures, setting the markers down. But I do find a cord from Phoenician blind. I find a black plastic bag.
The other is a blood-covered, rusted saw blade.
There was a miter saw that was there as well. I measured a 12-inch blade with a 6-inch handle. It's not every day you're going to go into a rural area and find a miter saw. That miter saw was used to dismember, in my mind, the body of the victim.
Were there hands at the scene?
Well, you're talking about hands with flesh on them and fingers, and you got squirrels and rabbits and all kinds of wildlife. That's an hors d'oeuvre for them. I mean, they're gonna take, birds will fly off with a finger.
Once a human is killed and her body is left in the wildlife area, you are not mama's baby boy anymore. You are lunch.
They properly marked it, identified evidence, and then brought it back to the Pueblo County Sheriff's Office. James Kramer traveled with Roger and met him at the Pueblo County Sheriff's Office.
Here's a body, here's a head, here's some evidentiary stuff like a saw. But it has to be proven. God forbid if you had the head of somebody else and it didn't match your torso. And you're out there blabbing about it. Not a good idea. You've got to be able to confirm it with science.
Dr. Kramer is able to determine that that skull, in fact, came from the torso of the body they have in the morgue. You now know that this skull is correct. Now, another question, who is it?
We realized there was a big chunk that was missing from the front of his right side of his face. What was that caused by?
Dr. Kramer is able to determine that the damage to the skull was caused by a gunshot wound, which of course explains the issue of not finding any damage on the body of John Doe. The fatal damage was restricted to the skull.
By the dispersing of the body parts, this individual was making every attempt to conceal who he was. This individual was going to be elusive and very difficult to connect with unless he committed another crime.
Who are we looking for here? Who is this guy? This is something out of the movies, but here we are. Does it connect to the killing of Victor Woods? We don't know, but we intend to find out. Right now, at this moment of this investigation of Victor Woods, we can reconstruct some of this. When we went to the Yukon Tavern, his car's at the bar. Mr. Woods did not walk home. It's too far. He's going to get a ride. Well, what if there was a cab outside? In the cab culture of the 1980s, they hang around airports, they hang around bars if they're not busy, because often people realize they've been drinking, they see the cab, they approach, and he has a fare. So we contacted all the taxi companies in Colorado Springs.
So the taxi cab companies are contacted. They tell Joe that, no, we didn't take anybody home from there. But one of the gals who was driving the taxi was in the parking lot when an altercation took place.
It was determined that Victor had gotten into an altercation inside the bar that moved to the outside.
And after it was over, she saw somebody walk up to Victor.
She said she'd never seen him before. He was wearing a black leather jacket, and he was by himself.
It was an observant cab driver because he may have caught her eye a bit. Dark curly hair, beautiful leather jacket, a little bit cocky in the way he walked.
He's incredibly good looking. Movie star handsome were her words. And he has a tan, a magnificent suntan. People notice things that are out of the ordinary. It's the middle of winter. Where'd he get a suntan?
She saw him go up, talk to Victor, and then Victor walked over and got into his car. Oh, what kind of car was he driving? Well, he was driving a blue Trans Am that had a very distinctive sound to it when he drove off.
Think back to our athlete, our man with the muscle car. That's the guy. So now we have another credible witness who sees Woods with this same individual. 2 and 2 always equals 4. This is our prime suspect, the man in the car.
There's a major interstate that runs right through Colorado Springs. You know, a blue Trans Am could have been here 1 minute and gone the next.
So where could that car be from? Who knows? But it's not from here. In the Pueblo Sheriff's Department, Deputy Roger Gomez. That's a very tall order on his hands.
The case, for me, brought on its own obsessiveness because I knew I had an obligation to the family. I had to get this and do the best job I possibly could.
The first step of many steps in the process is to go back and identify if there's anybody missing that meets the physical bone structure of this individual.
When this body was found, the torso was found, the body was very muscular, which indicated that this person worked out a lot.
About a couple weeks later, I'm working late one night, and a man by the name of Mr. Glenn Ferguson comes to our department after hours. I said, "How can I help you?" He says, "Well, I want to report a missing person." And I said, "Well, who is it?" He said, "Paul Vosica."
His stepson, Paul Vosica, has been missing for months.
It all made sense to me when the father came in and said he has a missing son who's a bodybuilder. It all made sense. That torso most likely is Paul Vosica.
Who is Paul Vosica? What does he do for a living? What are his habits? His hobbies? Does he engage in illegal activity? All the questions you have to ask.
There was a follow-up interview done with Paul Vosica's sister, Robin, and she indicated that Paul was actually a pretty good guy, but he started running with the wrong crowd.
She says yes, Paul has always been a bodybuilder, works out constantly, became interested in steroids, and that led him down a path of the use of drugs. And he got involved in drug running.
Robin, he gave me the impression that he was way over his head now. He was in danger land.
She indicated that one of the guys that Paul would hang around with, what she described as a very good-looking guy.
He's like movie star pretty. And he has this incredible tan all the time. A really good-looking guy with a tan. Well, my. You've been busy, Mr. Good-looking tan guy. What is he capable of? Anything to anybody. Violent crime is a horrible thing. It's been around ever since humans have been around. But there are levels of it. There are levels. Most murders are specific in motive. When you are a serial killer, you don't need a motive because the victim doesn't matter. It is very rare and very, very frightening.
I was in bed. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning that I got the call that my captain then wanted me to respond to the Hampton Inn.
The city of Pueblo has an incident where a security guard and a night clerk have been shot during a robbery.
My job immediately was to start taking measurements and a visual account of the scene so that I could prepare crime scene sketches. Photographs are obviously taken, but sketches can do a little bit more. They can add measurement.
The desk clerk was Raymond Garcia, who was 26 years of age, who was shot to death at the scene.
There was a life ended right there, a life that had a lot of potential ahead of it.
My dad called probably about 7:30, and he said that Ray was shot. And I just asked him, is he okay? And he's like, no, he didn't make it. And I just remember just crying, losing it.
And my heart just sank because not this guy. He was someone that was gentle, kind, loving. And I remember when I heard that, I thought, this is so unfair. This is so unfair. It's just not right.
Raymond was my brother. He was 3 years older than me. He was born in 61 and myself in 64. So yeah, he was always my protector. Ray was supposed to be working like 5 days before, and he switched with the girl because it was her birthday, so they switched, and he was there at the wrong time. But that was him. He would do whatever for anybody.
Nobody could understand why anybody would just take that life for no reason.
You could have just left them. You know, what was in that person's head that gave him the right to take another life?
The difference in this was, once again, there were two victims, one murder and one attempted murder. The security guard being shot in the jaw.
The security guard being treated for a gunshot wound at the hospital was Robert Martinez.
It appeared to be a robbery that was impulsive in shooting both individuals because the person wanted to get in, get out, and not have anybody remain as a witness.
They process everything they can, but it may not lead to much. They were unable to locate anyone at that crime scene. No resident was up. Nobody else was working around the area. Nobody saw anything.
I remember thinking, you know, God, you've got to do something, somehow, some way to bring this man to justice, to bring some peace to this family.
What they've got, hopefully, is a surviving eyewitness. He's in critical, unstable condition. But if he lives, he could be the key. In the 70s, we were all looking for ways to share information. So we developed in the West something called the Rocky Mountain Information Network, the Rimmen reports.
They are incident-based reporting systems that try to capture the details of a case so that unique parts of a case can be compared one to another to see if there are any linkages.
I was religious about getting those reports and reading them because the sharing of information is the key. Information is the way things get resolved. The more you know, the less you have to look for. So a Rimmen broadcast comes in about a crime in the city of Pueblo. When I read that initial Rimmen report, my face lit up. Well, are you the guy I'm looking for? I think maybe you are. It's a very nice moment when you finally think you're getting somewhere. Here we are with this Rimmen broadcast. The Hampton Inn on I-25 in Pueblo, Colorado, is robbed. The security guard is in a hospital being treated for severe injury. So the Pueblo PD has a witness, a living witness to this crime.
eyewitness who got shot is certainly a high-impact witness. They can give you details that you would never, ever get.
Fortunately, the bullet kind of grazed him, went in and around the skull instead of penetrating into the brain. But he could have easily been killed right there, and I think he realized that too.
Pueblo PD says, upon interviewing this surviving witness, Mr. Martinez, he walks in and sees an armed robbery in progress.
The man turned the gun toward him. He said, and this is pretty much a quote, "I think I'm going to kill you," and raised a gun and shot Robert Martinez right in the face. Well, Robert Martinez fell to the floor, but he was still alive and he was still semi-conscious. He said he heard the man walk into the other room where Raymond Garcia was, and he heard the shot.
What kind of person goes into a hotel which deals with very little cash and kills two people, or believes he's killed two people, for a small amount of money? The person that would do that is someone who has no emotion, has no understanding of the value of human life. What piqued my attention when I read that initial Rimmon report was at the end of that conversation with Martinez, Martinez said the last thing he remembered is he heard a muscle car drive off. Consider that for a moment. Think back to what the athletic girl said at the Lewis Lane Apartments. He drove a muscle car. The taxi driver at the bar Yukon Tavern, he drove a muscle car. All that adds up to something. We are all looking for the same guy, the very same guy. Could he be a serial killer? Of course. A misnomer perpetrated sometimes by the press that a serial killer does things exactly the same way. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. When you are a serial killer, the thrill for you is the kill. We need to find the owner and driver of a muscle car. That's the answer to this case. You have a crime scene on an interstate highway that is busy 24 hours a day in both directions. It goes to the Mexican border and nearly the Canadian border.
We had officers hit the highway both directions immediately, speeding north and speeding south, trying to come up with a car that had loud mufflers.
How difficult is it to patrol hundreds of miles of interstate?
In thousands of cars, yeah, it's very difficult. You've got a sheer volume on I-25 that's overwhelming. Reality is that you're not going to catch everybody.
How many muscle cars are out there driving around that interstate as we speak? Carcentino has a very tall order on his hands. That's not something easy to do. But while he's in the process of working on this problem, he gets the magic phone call. A witness calls in a woman, and she reports that she has information on who did the Hampton Inn robbery. Well, that's exactly who we're looking for, is another witness. They bring this woman in. She says she has this boyfriend, and his name is Ronald White.
She had information that her boyfriend was the one who had committed the robbery at the motel and had killed the clerk.
She dropped a dime on him. She had enough. It was really fresh. She was angry and ready to go.
There is an old expression, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. It's been my experience, that's very true. Ronald Lee White is about to learn this lesson. So he's no longer the guy with the tan. And a muscle car. He has a name. Now we're not chasing a ghost. We're chasing Ronald Lee White. The female says that she knows where he is because she threw him out. So the Pueblo PD knows his whereabouts. Now it's time to write an arrest warrant for 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted first-degree murder.
Myself and my partner were in the process of writing an arrest warrant. We asked Colorado Springs Police Department to provide some officers that could assist in surveillance.
When they arrive at the residence, a muscle car is parked in a driveway, indicating that Mr. White is most likely inside that building.
The question was, were they going to use a tactical entry into the house, or were they going to knock on the door and go in?
I don't think anyone expected him to be taken peacefully.
They surround the house. They're anticipating gunfire from a guy like this.
At some point, he came out, opened up a trash can and put something in the trash. And looked like he might leave, and they couldn't let that happen.
He came up to his car, and it rained cops.
He steps out, calmly turns around, and places his hands behind his back to be handcuffed. No resistance, no comment, no words. Great. Nobody died. I request the PD in Pueblo to provide me with their information on his background. He has a criminal history you can measure in pounds. For violent crimes, sex crimes, narcotics, you name it, he's involved in it. In huge ways, in huge numbers. 2 times in prison. On one of those occasions, words are said by another inmate, and Mr. White attacks him with a sledgehammer to within an inch of his life. It took 6 guards to get control of Mr. White, because he's absolutely out of control.
The dark personality of Ron White showed many times over into his stages of anger if you crossed him.
Another incident involving Mr. White in his history. He comes upon an incident where a police officer is trying to make a physical arrest. The suspect is gaining control of the officer. White walks up and shoots the guy in the head. Kills him. He didn't make a decision. He's an instinct. Oh, he needs to be dead. Boom! Suffice to say, Mr. White suffers from anger issues. No kidding.
I was concerned about Ron White escaping. He was coming into the Pueblo County Detention Facility, and I wanted to make sure that the receiving deputies knew that we were going to isolate him and not put him in a holding cell with anybody.
About a dozen deputies led him down the hall, and he just kind of had a scowl, and he looked at everybody as he walked by, and you could just see in the eyes they were blank. There's no humanity, no compassion, no feeling in those eyes. It was scary. It was like looking into the eyes of evil. The eyes of the devil.
Now that Mr. White is in custody and is perfectly intact and coherent, Corsentino has the opportunity to question him about the Hampton Inn robbery. He tells Corsentino he's had the gun, bought it in Denver, kept it in his glove box. He needed it for a rainy day. Oh, really? What's your definition of a rainy day, Mr. White?
He told me when he went into the Hampton Inn to rob the place, he got insulted. I said, why? Because the guy didn't take me serious. I'm sitting here with a gun. He doesn't even pull his gun, so I shot him. Because I got insulted. Do your job the right way.
After the security guard disarmed himself at the demand of Mr. White, when he has the security guard Martinez on his knees,
Just told Robert Martinez, I think I'll kill you. Shot him right in the face. Never looked back. Walked in the other room. Put a gun to the back of the head of Raymond Garcia. Shot him dead.
it's a very, very sick, violent death. But Mr. White is very sick indeed. Pueblo PD says if he killed Victor Woods, he'll confess. He loves to confess. He loves to say outrageous things to see your reaction. He is, as we say, an unusual guy. I'm going to interrogate him, and I want to know who I'm dealing with before I do that. What buttons should I push, and what buttons should I avoid? If he's angry, he won't tell me anything. He'll invoke his rights. He'll walk out, and I'll never know for certain if it's him. And off he comes to Colorado Springs. I have met only one serial killer in my career, and it's a remarkable experience when you sit across the table from someone like that. I'm expecting him to be very alert. I'm expecting him to be nervous. When I walk in that room, he's not nervous. He's not anticipating anything. Mr. White is asleep on his forearm. I thought, well, what do we have here? I said, do you prefer to be called Mr. White? Do you like Ronald? Do you like Ronnie? He just looked at me, so call me Ronnie. Okay. So you can call me Joe. So now we've established this little rapport. So he notices a sign in the room that says no smoking. I said, do you smoke, huh? Yeah. Would you like a cigarette? Well, there's a sign. I said, yeah, I might kind of run this place, so. You want a cigarette? I'll get you one. I put a cigarette in his mouth. And I lit a cigarette. And I said, oh, you need a light, don't you? And I kind of laughed. Yeah, he said, So I threw the lighter at him. When he opened his hand, there's a pink scar running across his palm. And I said, you got that injury on your hand there. Yeah. I bet you got that when you stabbed Victor, didn't you? And he looked at me, turned his head, and he said, yeah. And it hurt, too. Oh, I bet it did. So here we are with Ronald Lee White. He's charged with a number of homicides, and now he's about to tell me about the death of Victor Woods. I never asked him another question. Tell me how he watched him in the bar. He was drunk. He started a fight. White said he kind of felt sorry for him. So he said, I'll give you a ride. Takes him home to those apartments. And when they get there, that's when something goes wrong. Obviously, Mr. White is easily provoked. That's what makes him so scary. One minute, he's performing a service by giving somebody a ride. The next minute, he's hacking them to pieces with a 13-inch knife and examining their stomach because he's never looked in one before. Who are you, man?
He had no qualm in talking about that whole thing. It was almost like it was a badge of honor for him just to talk about this is what he had done.
After White kills Woods, he is significantly hurt by this knife. He's trying to stop the bleeding. Then Ronnie decides it's time to burn the place. What'd you think about all the people living in that building? Them. I had to cover up that evidence.
Ronald Lee White told investigators he didn't think he'd get caught. He didn't leave any clue behind that would catch him in this. But yes, he did.
Now it's time to discuss the murder of Paul Vasica and his dismemberment.
Paul's sister, Robin, I think she was aware of some of the circles that he was in.
Well, there's one guy in particular he spends a lot of time with, and he's a bad news guy. And he and Paul Vasica were the very best of friends, had known each other for a long time. And they wound up in the drug business together.
He said they would do drug rips from Pueblo to Colorado Springs to Denver, sometimes 2 and 3 times a night.
White gets it in his head that Vasica has stolen $1,500 from him. Very common among dopers.
If he's hitting up the Hampton Inn for $200, what do you think he would feel if Vasica pulled and stole $1,500 from his wallet? You have now gone into the depths of hell. You violated the king, and you're going to pay with your life now.
He tells us that he lures him out to a remote area. He puts Vasika on his knees. He tortures him verbally for an hour. He's going to kill this man, but he wants his hour of enjoyment first.
He took out a book from the back of his car, which is about this thick, put it behind Vasika's head, took the gun, and shot him. And the theory for White was that it would produce maybe less blood.
Why get dirty? You're just killing this piece of crap that has annoyed you. Good God. Now he has this guy dead. He uses a saw.
I'll never forget it as long as I live, the way he described it. He said that when he took the miter saw and he's gonna cut the head off, he got angry. And I said, well, why did you get angry? He says, because it got stuck on his neck bone. He eventually got through it, but it was so hard that when he got to the hands to cut those off, he said they came off like butter.
Well, isn't that nice, Mr. White? So much easier. He walks away with a head in his hand by the hair and thinks how much easier it is to carry the head than it was to put his body over that fence. Mr. White drives away with Mr. Vasika's head 20 miles or so away. He throws it out the window over a fence. Somebody will find it, probably. Maybe no one ever will. And if they do, well, so what? How are they going to connect that to him? They're not. Because he's a genius. He kills cleverly. And he will continue to do it.
Probably learning from the Vasika murder to the Victor Woods case to the Garcia case in Pueblo. He is becoming harder and harder and more cruel as every murder continues to go on.
So Mr. White announces he's tired. He don't want to talk anymore. All right. And I said, I'll see you in court. I stood up and he stopped. He turned and looked at me and said, you know, I don't know if I can remember all the people I've killed. That's a pretty amazing statement. Mr. White was ankle deep in blood when we met him. What's to say he wasn't knee deep before we met him? Now, why did Ronald Lee White tell me he didn't know if he could remember all these murders he's committed? What's he up to? Does he believe he's been caught anyway and he might as well tell the truth? Does he want to brag about it? Does he want the attention that's going to bring him? Given what we know about Mr. White and how he has behaved in the past several months in Pueblo and Colorado Springs, there's absolutely no reason in the world to disbelieve him. Of all the people I've arrested, charged, and convicted of murder, the worst person I've ever dealt with is Ronald Lee White, without doubt. In my humble opinion, I think he's good for 15 murders.
I don't think there's any question, as I sit here now, years later, that Ron White committed more murders than we know about. He has a pattern of behavior.
I believe the statement. I do. But what I think doesn't matter. What only matters is what I can prove. Mr. White did plead guilty to the murder of Victor Woods, the murder of Mr. Garcia, and the murder of Paul Vasika, and the attempted murder of Mr. Martinez. Those are the only 4 cases we could prove he was involved in. Mr. White is so bizarre that here he is in court with this massive weightlifter body, handcuffed behind his back in belly chains, I'm in there. And he says to everybody, I'll kill all of you sons of bitches, and I'll kill your kids too.
To an end.
But that's what he got, life in prison. And he's still there, in prison, locked up and alone, where he's always going to be until the day he dies.
This guy took someone's life, and he's paying for it with his life. He deserves everything he gets. Justice is served.
I just want to tell him I love him and I miss him. He was the best brother anybody could have. He's my guardian angel.
How would I want Vic to be remembered? He just had a zest for life, a little bit of a zest for adventure.
Vic, we loved you, and I'm glad that you were part of our life. We really, really cared for him in so many ways.
I take a lot of pride in how I handled this case. But I think our efforts in reference to getting this guy convicted and getting him where he belongs is proof enough for me.
Look at the effort. Look at the loss. Look at the pain. Look at the death. It gives you some insight into what law enforcement deals with every day. It is intense work with very intense results. It's a kind of work that requires a dedication. It isn't a job, it's a calling.